So Dr. Ian, okay, the question that moms and dads, including myself from all over, want to know, how can we prep our kids for back to school?
It's a big decision trying to get kids to go back to school. And the first thing that has to happen is you have to have a conversation that's very direct and very honest. Listen, kids know a lot more than we think they know. They understand a lot more than we think they can understand. And they're resilient, not just physically, but also mentally. You got to tell your kid, listen, these are uncertain times. It's difficult for you. It's difficult for me. Don't be afraid to let them know that you're having difficulty with this also. But you also have to say to them, we're going to work through this. You got to also end with a positive. We're going to get through this. It's going to work out, but we all have to be patient together. And it's not just you, it's everybody. So they realize that it's not just a unique problem for them or their school, that the whole country is doing this and we're going to get through it. The other thing I think with kids, preparing them, is to say, listen, things are going to be different in school. It's not going to be like it was last year, but things are going to return to normal. And I think that if you give kids a little bit of hope that things will normalize, rather than saying, this is it for the rest of your life, I think, it makes a difference to give them that positive outlook. And I think the third thing is that, I'm really worried about how infectious COVID-19 is. And I'm extremely worried about kids, because kids are kids. We can't expect kids to behave like adults. So will they always wear their mask? Will they not hug each other? Will they not touch each other? I think it's pretty unrealistic to expect kids to perfectly conduct themselves following COVID-19 protocol. And so I think in that particular sense, parents need to have a really strong conversation with the schools and those who are running the schools and making sure certain things are in place. But even then, it's never going to be 100%.
Right. I know, it's so crazy. It's probably one of the hardest decisions we're going to have to make this year. I have 3 kids myself, so I'm waiting to the last minute to make my decision of whether they go to school or remote learning. So I totally get it, but these are great tips.
Yeah. No, definitely. I mean, and then what should we be sending with our kids if they're going back to school, if they're going into the classroom? Should they be, with their pen and paper, should they be carrying around hand sanitizer? Should they be carrying wipes? What can they do when they get to their desk?
Every day, your child should go to school in his backpack or her backpack and have it at his or her desk if they allow you to keep things. Every school is different now, but they need to have an emergency pack. They need to have gloves. They need to have extra masks, because kids lose things all the time, right? And they need to have sanitizer and wipes. I think all 4 items should be in their emergency pack. 1 in their backpack, 1 at school, so that in case something goes missing, they still have it.
What about after school? So when they come home from school, are we gonna hose them down in the doorway? Do we have to disinfect their clothes? Do they immediately have to get in the shower? What do we need to do about that?
Yeah, the science right now is a little conflicting, but my read on it right now is that the idea of doing full body disinfecting spray is a little much. Yeah, I would change clothes. I think that's a pretty safe recommendation, but understanding that the virus does not live very well on certain surfaces, and what it takes to be infected is not always easy. You gotta, if it's on your clothes, you gotta touch your clothes and then touch your mouth, your nose, your eyes. So it requires that kind of inoculation. But the other thing actually is to make sure that kids understand this. Before you eat, always, before you touch your face, you've gotta wash your hands or use sanitizer. And that will cut a lot of it out. Because you can touch the virus or touch public surfaces that have virus on it, but then before you start eating, if you wash your hands or sanitize your hands, then the risk reduction is huge. So I think that's the biggest part. No matter when, every time you go to eat or touch your face, you must wash or sanitize beforehand.
Yeah, I mean, that is such a good tip. But some of these kids that are going back are so young, and that it's so hard for them to teach things like that, to remember like that, especially wearing a mask too. I mean, do you have tips for getting young kids to wear a mask? My daughter, she's 16 months. I know she's a little bit young to wear one because you have to be 2 years old, but I tried to put one on her and it was a disaster, like a full on meltdown. So, but I'm sure I'm not the only one. I mean, there's got to be so many people that can't get their kids to wear masks.
Well, there are two things that I can think of right away, which is one, make the mask fun, meaning put action figures on them, something, cartoon characters, whatever your kids like, put them on the mask. So make the mask fun, not just straight old boring plain mask that we as adults wear. And the second part of it is actually engage your child in a game where you're wearing masks so they feel like, okay, this whole thing, I'm actually wearing this mask, right? So you gotta, we're approaching it like, hey, you have to wear this because you don't want to get sick. A kid doesn't understand that. But a kid understands if wearing the mask is kind of part of what we do. Like, so practicing at home, when you go out, make it more fun. So it's less about, you got to do this and more about like, hey, isn't this cool? Let's do, So I think that you have to keep it that way. But the truth of the matter is a 2-year-old kid, they're going to tug, right? This is my point. It's not going to be perfect. And we can't expect these kids to be perfect. And so that's why it's important to have that really firm and dialogue with school administrators about what are their backup plans when plan A doesn't work. They have to have plan B and plan C.
Right.
I wanted to give our Instagram account because if people have questions or topics they want on the show, they can Instagram me or Instagram the show and we'll try to get everything on.
Definitely. I think that's fantastic. And everybody make sure to catch Dr. Ian on The Doctors, premiering September 21st. Check your local listings and make sure to pick up his latest book, Mind Over Weight.